Blast Sybil Edmonds has claimed a more sinister financial incentive to continue a war generals say they can't win, and it involves a health catastrophe closer to home. Production of opium since the US came in has taken off. Afghanistan now provides almost all the world's supply. International calls to spray opium crops and end production, Reuters reports, are being blocked by the US government. The huge increase in opioid consumption in the States, says the Center for Disease Control, is why an American now dies of drug abuse every 19 minutes. Senior Pentagon sources confirmed to a Sunday Times investigation Edmonds' revelations that US officials are fueling Afghan drug transport. Fearing massive repercussions, the State Department reports Ceasefire magazine put intense pressure on the Sunday Times, which pulled its correspondents off the four-part report. Edmonds' evidence was eventually investigated by the Justice Department, which, while keeping its findings classified, did admit, crucially, her findings were, quote, supported. Let's speak to former intelligence officer Scott Rickard. Great to have you on the show. First, how big is this problem?
This country consumes 60% of the world's opiates, the stuff that the Americans are basically hooked on. You know, the Oxycontin epidemic in Florida is out of control. You can't imagine how many people in my neighborhood have children and families that have been affected by the Oxycontin epidemic.
Yeah, who's profiting from this?
So the Afghan farmer, he doesn't make as much, you know. I mean, he's making the least amount. But the real money comes in when it gets out of the country. Daniel Hopsicker wrote a great book about the drug trade in Florida called Welcome to Terrorland instead of Welcome to Disneyland. And it's a story about, it goes into the base where Mohammed Atta trained, or the airfield where Mohammed Atta trained, was a CIA operations field where they were flying in heroin. You're talking about billions of dollars a year in money that comes in that's you don't answer for it. So there, and it goes to the highest levels. I asked John McCain a question in a SICE Institute meeting. I asked him, I said, well, what do you think about the the amount of drugs that are coming out of Afghanistan, making it into the streets of America? He said that it's beneath him. Cocaine Cowboys. It's a fake documentary. It goes into complete detail around the cocaine trade in the 70s and 80s. 7 times the deposits in Miami alone of all the other Federal Reserve banks at the time was being laundered and deposited through the Federal Reserve in Miami. So that should tell you something. It's a huge amount of money.
The Justice Department says no one at HSBC will face trial for what Alternet calls massive drug money laundering and giving favoured client status to known narco barons. An investigation in London's Observer newspaper goes further, claiming, quote, the world's biggest drug money launderers are the City of London and Wall Street. The author of Questioning the War on Terror is Dr. Kevin Barrett. Great to see you, Kevin. What do you see as going on here?
The Taliban had stopped the opium crop. They had shut down that business, which took away $1 trillion or so out of the coffers. When the U.S. invaded, they just propped up all the opium lords and told them to plant, and they had a bumper crop and set world records within a year or two. I mean, yes, the Wall Street bankers are dependent on drug laundering money, money laundering, to keep their enterprises going. They're making all of these crazy gambles with derivatives. You know, estimates of the amount of derivatives floating around are into the hundreds of trillions, more than there is real assets on Earth. And so this corrupt banking system is very vulnerable. And what they do is they leverage the drug profits.